Greetings. My name is Mike Pascarella, president of Pascarella Multimedia and founder of Thinking Out Loud, a think tank symposium for entrepreneurs. The conversation series consists of short videos featuring interviews with great minds, sharing thoughtful perspectives on the worlds of art, business, and the social fabric of this changing world. My guest today is the incredibly talented Lisa Bella Donna. Lisa is a world-renowned multi-instrumentalist, composer, synthesist, sound designer, and clinician. She has toured throughout the US, Japan, and Europe. Her latest album, Cheyenne Crossing, is available now at all digital music stores and streaming services. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, how's it going?
Very good. It's good. I'm very, very honored to be talking to you today.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me and including me in your program.
Well, I just want to assure anybody watching that the introduction was not hyperbole. First and foremost, I hope you and your loved ones have remained healthy and avoided COVID-19 so far. Everything good?
Yes, so far so good. We're very fortunate to live out in the country, and that's really helped a lot. You know, so we just stay here, and I'm homeschooling my daughter here. And it's a very fortunate situation. I'm very grateful. Prior to living here, I lived in a very dirty part of downtown, you know, so it's I'm very blessed that I moved out here before all this hit.
Looking at that room, I think that room could be anywhere. It could be in a major city, it could be out in the country, and it would be what it is. It's a beautiful collection of old and new.
Thank you.
So first off, congratulations on the new album.
Thank you so much.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, it's an album of very deep ambient music, and it's actually something that I have been working on composing-wise for about a year. It is a tone row based record, and it is not totally avant-garde. It is very, very drone oriented. I guess I would call it drone music, but it was really great to put it together and to take the time that I did to develop the pieces before coming into the studio. Always produces an interesting result. And this album is no exception to that. Along with the compositions on the album, I also commissioned a film to be a part of the album. And I worked with an amazing woman named Ann Sulikowski, who is a multi-talent out of Canada. And I are longtime friends and colleagues, and I was so excited to get to ask her to be a part of this, and she accepted. Her work is so brilliant on it. It is really it's a very special thing for me to have that kind of video composition along with my music. You know, there's not very many people I've worked with that is as intuitive as Ann Sulikowski is with my music. You know, we have a very close rapport, so that helps in navigating each other's, you know, artistic, intentional destinations.
Have you met prior to the collaboration, or did all of this seem to happen organically, or was there a kind of a getting to know each other process?
Oh no, Ann and I have known each other for 4 years, I think now, and she is very prolific artist in her own right. She does a lot of music and sound design. She is an amazing video composer. She's a painter, she's an amazing photographer, and she's also a nurse. You know, she is a really awesome human. I love her to pieces. And we've just had a great friendship and connection, and have always been very supportive of each other's works. And when the opportunity came to do this, I wanted to include her because I love the way that she uses visuals and, sound and video assemblage, if you will. And it's perfect for this particular piece of music. This piece of Cheyenne Crossing is kind of an entire, I wouldn't call it a concept album, but I guess it's, it veers in that direction. And she really just added the perfect visual. I wanted people to see the music the way I see it as I'm composing it. When I'm composing these albums, I'm usually seeing the music as much as I'm hearing what I'm going to do when I come into the studio. And sometimes I feel that maybe my music may be over far reaching to some listeners. So I wanted to have something that added another element to it, to maybe invite people who haven't experienced this music in this way.
Oh, well, your music is very, very diverse. So I would imagine that the journey that you're bringing your listeners on, will change from album to album, from project to project. Anybody looking to seek out your music is going to be maybe pleasantly surprised to see all the genres that you've worked in. You've worked with metal, jazz fusion, progressive, electronic, and all the subsets around those sometimes broad categories. Do you find that those listeners are willing to take those leaps into those different genres with you, or are you finding more that you are attracting different audiences with different projects?
I think more of the latter. At this point now, I'm trying not to work my listeners to death in following me around the different genres. And as well as I've also, at this point in my life, I have finally arrived at a place in life where I'm doing exactly what I want to do, and that's electronic oriented music. I have had great experiences traveling and touring and recording with many different kinds of musical styles and demographics. But this is my heart. This is what has always been part of what I do, no matter what else I've done on the road and things like that. And with my own albums, I'm not that eager to start gear shifting on my listeners. And I love where this is going right now. And I feel very connected to the people that have supported my albums. And like I said, I do a lot of teaching and clinics and things. And so I connect with another audience, if you will, with students. And that's another kind of audience, because it's not just a us and them thing. It becomes very much a shared experience. And that's what I want. I want to have less style and just more substance, and the electronic music world allows me the lineage to do that, whereas if I'm playing in a rock band, it's got to play by those rules, or, jazz or jazz fusion, all those things I have to obey rules. And I kind of don't like to do that. It really worked out for me. So, now I'm doing whatever I want.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, that's, to be able to get there in any career, not just music, and feel like that your creative output is serving yourself as an artist, but also speaking and reaching out to your target audience, to your fans. What a wonderful place to be. I mean, I've talked to a lot of musicians who have struggles with that. What are their expectations, especially people who have been in business for a long time, or if anybody who's attained any notoriety. They sometimes can very easily be pigeonholed, or expectations can be so strong that they feel compelled to make their fans happy, and that sort of drives the creative process. Or instead of driving the creative process, maybe steers them away from the creative process, and it ends up becoming more of a mechanical, more of a business-oriented ordeal than a artist, creator, and somebody listening or trying to connect with your art. It seems to me like that's a really good place to be where you are right now.
Well, I think the word expectations has a lot to do with it. I think there's a lot of artists that, and I learned this the hard way in the other styles that I've played. You know, when I played more heavy metal and rock and roll scenes, you know, I had this expectation of what listeners, of how listeners should be participating. And it really didn't do me any favors to think that listeners wanted to participate. You know, the way that people listened to that kind of music 30, 40 years ago is way different than how people listen to it now, and how it makes them feel or makes them want to participate in what's going on. And that's where I felt it stifled that part of my career, because I was somebody who was very like in your face in that kind of music, and people don't want that. They want to stand there with their arms crossed, and, you know, and they want the musicians to sort of have that sort of thing too, I guess. I don't know what. I don't really, like I said, I gave up on those kinds of musics because I didn't find a place where I could call home, you know, regardless of whether I can make great music of that kind. I still lost my connection with it. You know, I still listen to many different kinds of musics and love it, but I don't want to play it. You know, I don't want to be a part of that. And I feel that with where I've got things now in my musical spectrum, it's just a very natural concurrence between what I'm doing, the work that I'm doing with education, technology, as well as just connecting with people on a personal level. You know, now there's the amazing blessing of having so many people in social media that can just reach out and say, hey, you know, and ask you questions about the music or give you reflection and feedback. And those things are always considered. You know, anybody that reaches out to me and has something positive or constructive to say, you know, I'm always interested in hearing that and considering it in my process. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just, you know, coming up with your own expectations of yourself and not putting that on your listeners or your audience. It's not their responsibility. Who cares? You know what I mean? And that's, I had this long period of time where I just quit putting out records because I thought, who cares? You know, I didn't have any expectations of whether anybody would want to listen to my records or not. So I just enjoyed making records and putting them on the shelves over here. So, but that's changed again, you know, as everything in life continues to orb and change, you know. I don't know if I made any points there. Well, I just think that expectations have a lot to do with musicians particularly getting frustrated because, you know, you just have to put it out there and see if anybody salutes it. You know, that's it.
Lisa, do you find that your target audience, well, I won't say target audience, but the people who are attracted to your music, your fan base, are they mostly musicians, do you find? And the reason why I'm asking is that you're a virtuoso. I'm saying that that's a truthful statement. Couldn't be more sincere with that label. That is not a label I throw around lightly. But that label, with that, also comes an audience that can be knowledgeable from a technology standpoint, from a technique standpoint, and those can be some pretty tough expectations. Do you agree?
Sure, absolutely. I have a lot of people who are very critical of what I do, but I don't care. It's not about, I don't have any expectations of them either. You know, I'm just doing this because it's my love, and that's it. You know, and if people quit buying my records, you know, that's just a natural, then it's natural. I've already done the sort of jukebox thing, you know, where you make an album and you play that album and you do it note for note and all that. And I mean, that's boring. You know, it's like a desk job that I don't really want to have. I want to make music that is in the moment as possible. And it's one of the reasons why I record my records very quickly, because I want to capture that wind that's coming through during that system. And that goes also with how I perform live, how I teach, how I approach each different situation. Is very, you know, natural osmosis of the elements and the people that are involved. And, you know, you're not going to please everybody. And you just have to kind of accept that and just bring out your best intentions. I mean, that's what art and music is, you know, is that capturing of that intention. And when it does work, you get to connect with people on such an awesome, timeless level. You know, I've had people that have become fans of my music over a 30-year period. And that's not a bragging right as much as it is a point of gratitude and observation that you can do something that affects people that much that 30 years later, they're going to come back around and say, hey, you know that song that you did this, or this piece of music, you know, and they just gush about it or talk about a life experience that music felt symbiotic with. That's the best stuff. You know, you can't package that. It just happens. And that's why I continue to put out music publicly.
What a wonderful way of being able to connect with an audience at that level. I'll go back to something that you said just a couple of minutes ago, and if I can paraphrase it, you can overwork it to the point where you lose that spontaneity and that art changes and that purity goes away. I remember reading an interview with Christopher Guest, and he was talking about in his movies, you know, Waiting for Guffman and The Mighty Wind and all of those. His approach is improvisational. Starts with a concept, but it's improvisational. And the rule that he has is that he doesn't go beyond 3 takes. He said after that, it feels very contrived and you lose whatever that moment was creating, and you craft something else that ends up being more mechanical in nature, or you use the term jukebox, which really is what musicians are reduced to sometimes when they're playing live.
And that's okay. There's no rules to it. You know, it's all about what you enjoy or what you feel is an honest representation of your own expression. And it's just where I'm at with my music now is I just want it to be free. And I want to be free in my music. I want to create a home for my listeners that makes them feel free to roam in their own imagination, and then they forget about what I'm doing and they get into their own inspirational mind, or just anything that makes them feel connected to the wilderness of themselves. You know, I mean, that's really what I'm after. And
are you creating a third being there by saying that, there's the musician, there's the listener, but those two together create this other relationship, this other being?
Absolutely. That's why I like to put out a lot of live records, because I feel that when you're in performance, I'm going to approach my music and the equipment that I use to do it with differently. If I'm in a certain room, if people are super close to me or people are spread out far away, it changes how I have to cast the spell, you know, and offer them something that makes them want to be a part of it and to listen. There's a responsibility that I feel that performers have that goes beyond just playing your repertoire. You have to connect with them somehow and sort of reveal who you are, and that is not always easy when you're in a large crowd of people. And, I'm kind of an introverted person naturally, so it is a commitment to do that. But I feel that it's important for the music. I owe it to the listeners that are willing to listen to my music, and I owe it to the years I put into becoming a composer and a musician.
So I want to talk a little bit about your musical journey getting there. You were born in Cleveland, Ohio?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, my dad worked for GM Motors at the time, General Motors, and my mother was a regional hostess for Holiday Inns. So it was an interesting, working class, very urban environment. But it was also, there was a lot of music listening that my parents would do, especially on the weekends. And with my mother's work particularly, I would go and watch bands rehearse at Holiday Inns when I was very little, and just be fascinated by watching these bands rehearse, and volume and the quality of music of that time. Because you had to be a good musician to work those clubs and be versatile. And that had a huge impact on me, and to see different kinds of people, different kinds of, just wasn't who was on the album covers. It was your regular people up there making this great music. It's just a great experience. And my mother's sister, my aunt, was a country and western musician, and she and her daughter used to babysit me a lot. So I was surrounded by a lot of music there, and had my first experience playing a Wurlitzer organ. It's huge. It just looked like a castle of sound. I was obsessed with getting on that thing.
Wow.
Her daughter, this is in the early mid-70s. She was a young, good-looking rock and roll fan, and took me to things like, she took me to an Aerosmith sound check when I was 3, 4 years old. And to experience something like that at that age was really profound. And she just exposed me to a lot of music at the time, popular rock music.
Was there a point in your life, either at that very young age or at any point, where you had that moment where you said, this is what I want to do for my career?
Oh, yeah. Well, that Aerosmith sound check was one of them. I mean, I was literally right at the foot of the stage, watching these guys, getting eye contact, and it was really special. But I would say even more so than that, when my cousin, the same cousin I'm speaking of, she sat me down one time between the speakers and put on Black Sabbath's Paranoid. And there was just something about that just blew my mind, just it was just this experience. I think I had a little astral projection or something at that age. And that was it. After that, there was no question that this is what I'm going to be doing.
When I was a kid, I was in a Black Sabbath cover band. We did from the first album all the way up to Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. And that's what we did. There was something about that band. Of course, many, many people get it because, they've impacted quite a bit. They were quite seminal in their sound and the way that, that dark brooding feel, but there was also a lightness to it. Since you mentioned Black Sabbath, I'll throw this out to you. We had a discussion among friends at one point. My contention is that a lot of what you're hearing when you listen to Black Sabbath has a connection. Now, I know they started off as a blues band and then evolved into Black Sabbath. But when I hear Black Sabbath, I hear a lot of jazz.
Oh man, yeah. They swung hard. I mean, they didn't necessarily overindulge with solos and things like that, but they, Wicked World, and I mean, there's some serious swinging on those records. I totally agree.
Yeah, they're a great band. I had read somewhere that you cut your teeth when it came to writing music, producing jingles, advertising.
Well, I was already composing earlier than that, but my first professional gigs were working in jingle studios. I taught music at a music store while I was still in high school, and just starting high school, really. And the owners of this music store, they had several businesses. They had they had a couple of music stores. They had a recording studio. They had a speaker cabinet making company, and other things I can't recall at this time. But they were very supportive of me and essentially kind of scooped me off the street and gave me a great place to develop my skills. But I initially just started going over there to help them with jingle commercials, and it went so well that they hired me on there full time. So after I quit teaching and started doing that after school days, and then during the summers I was working full time, and that's where I developed that's where the world of electronic music really started to take shape for me, because I had a place where I had the opportunity to experiment. And these guys and girls were sages. They knew a lot. They were a really unique bunch.
So that was where your interest was piqued with respect to synthesis and some of these instruments that some of these old classic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, at the time they were, this would have been the mid to late 80s. And at the time they had already embraced where technology was going, and they had the Yamaha music computer system and a TX-816 and all of that sort of stuff from the era, Sonic Mirage samplers and D50s and yada yada. But I didn't like the way that stuff sounded. I mean, I thought it sounded fine for what the function was, which was making jingles. I mean, the format was still analog. They used analog recorders and analog mix down machines, and that's where I learned how to edit tape and learn how to print to tape and things like that. So it was very, very grateful that I had that tutelage. Can't say that word, but I became fascinated. They had a Fender Rhodes piano in the studio, and I couldn't keep my hands off of it, and so they were like, well, you seem to like this old stuff. So have you ever played an ARP? And so, they get an old dusty ARP Odyssey out of the storage, and And it was just like, that was it. I was completely obsessed with spending time with it. And it got to the point, you know, by the end of that first year working there, I had bought quite a few pieces of gear, and because nobody wanted that stuff back then. I bought an ARP Omni, a Moog Prodigy, some Roland tape echoes and CR78s, and a couple other things, a Gen SX1000 synthesizer, which is a cool little old weird synth, and Pro Soloist, I can't remember. But by the time I started collecting that much stuff, they're like, you got to get all this old junk out of here. And so they set me up with this little room that was like a storage room, and they were kind enough to supply me. They were starting to turn over their tape machines at that point, and so they let me use their Tascam 388, which is what I'm fumbling on right now.
Is that the one that is 1/4 inch but 8 tracks?
Yeah, parametric EQ and preamps. The preamps are fantastic.
Wow.
I use the preamps all the time, even without using the tape machine necessarily. But yeah, it's very formative, very amazing time in my life to go from basically a really bad home situation as a kid to being on the street, to, you know, teaching guitar in the evenings, to working on jingles and recording bands and singers and watching them arrange music. And they're very aggressive, creative people. And I like that. You know, they were very specific about what they would want. And it's awesome. It was a great period in my life. Very, very formative. And they really embraced who I was. And they were like, okay, this is what you're into. We'll go and set you up so you can take all this junk out of here and go do whatever you want with it. And so I would spend every waking moment in that room recording music and experimenting and just developing my technique with it, with analog synthesis.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, just to have all of that at your beck and call, it's like a warehouse filled with, I mean, today we look at that stuff and we go, oh my goodness, to go back and just grab all the stuff when it was on the cheap, how great would that be? But I remember those days.
This Moog and ARP behind me, the Prodigy and the ARP Axe, is from that era. You know, that Moog I bought when I was living there. I bought it, as a matter of fact, I bought it from Daddy's Junkie Music in New Hampshire. You remember that place?
I do remember that place. I've got a lot of gear from that store.
Thanks, Hirsch Gardner. I hope he's still doing well. He was my dude. I used to buy a lot of stuff from Hirsch up there.
Yep, I knew him. Yeah.
Hirsch Gardner, that's awesome.
Yep, yeah. You spent some time in Cambridge, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I used to do a lot of hotel gigs in the 90s. And I eventually worked my way up to that area in Massachusetts and Boston. And I had these aspirations of going to Berkeley and stuff, but it wasn't going to happen, you know, just the way things worked out. But I got to go experience a lot of really awesome musicians and awesome, just different kinds of music scenes. There was the Berkeley scene and all that brilliance coming out of there, and just, you know, all that hunger for playing amazing music too. I played more R&B music at the time, more like R&B jazz, and played with a lot of Black musicians. And so, you know, at the time it wasn't popular to show up to a gig with a Fender Rhodes and an ARP Omni and a Moog Prodigy, and that's it. They would be like, you know, where's your digital piano? And this is all I have, you know, and they were just like, that's awesome. So, you know, it was very awesome experience to get to make that music. And there was a long period of time then I was very, very much into, very obsessed with music like Grover Washington Jr. and Roy Ayers and you know, Teddy Pendergrass, Luther Vandross, uh, Denise Williams, you know, huge. I still am a huge R&B music listener, but I played R&B music for many years. And that's kind of
So,
what led me up to the Boston area. But I didn't have what it takes to stick around. You know, it's just too big of a city for me. I'm a country girl. It's a great experience, you bet.
what I'm seeing now is this renewed interest in analog synthesizers, particularly uh, monosynthesizers and modular synthesizers. How do you feel that this has impacted the industry and creativity, that all of these, you know, maybe younger musicians are starting to rediscover this gear that you have to approach in a very different way than you would, you know, a Yamaha DX7 even, right?
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's just an observation, but I think that it's been a very healthy full circle. It's great to see not only as much interest as there is now in analog and modular synthesis, but it has become a very healthy industry for that matter. I mean, people are making lots of different instruments under this, you know, under this huge sky of concept. I mean, there are so many synthesizer builders now. It's really kind of crazy. So there is definitely a demand for it. And there's, you know, the work that I do now is I do so much teaching and tutorials with you know, individuals and classes that it's really amazing to see how people are incorporating them, and they give using a computer a whole new life. And it brings a lot of, you know, analog synthesizers should move air. You know, that's what I love. One of the things I love about them is that it is a physical experience to incorporate one into what you're doing. So I think that that's a great thing. I think that with the styles of music, there's so much different stuff out there that it's hard to, you know, really pinpoint. It would be a matter of taste once again. I have my own personal tastes, but there's lots of different kinds of people using analog synthesizers now. It's great. You know, I'm glad that they're back. You know, the 90s were very dark ages.
It's a new generation of listeners and musicians. And I would imagine that that is making them look towards other musicians who are doing similar things. So I would imagine that it's been good for your career that there's this renewed interest in that kind of instrument as well as that style of music.
Absolutely. It's a huge part of what I do at this point. You know, I wouldn't be able to survive without that kind of interest in those that want to work with me, either on records or educational stuff or product development. You know, I do a lot of that too. I do a lot of product consulting and, you know, design instruments myself, but I have a lot of ideas that I bring to the table and do lots of beta testing and programming, things like that. So.
And you're doing that for Moog currently.
I am. Yeah, it's been a wonderful relationship. They are very, very clear, talented people. And it's always a pleasure working with them because there's always an opportunity to really bring your truest self to the table. And there's no egos, there's no BS. It's just, you know, how can we make something that's really special and make it so that it lasts? You know, and that's what it's all about. And the thing is their products, their instruments, really, I mean, they're a mainstay in my studio and have been for years. So to be a part of that now is really it's a great pleasure. And it's a privilege more so than just the name, but the people that I have gotten to know with Moog Music, they're just they're so inspiring. They're such talented people, and they have such a passion for what they're doing, and that really feeds me and everything else that I do. So that's what I'm looking for, is to work with people who are on that level of focus and clarity. It's really a real gift to get to work with them, and I love to bring them stuff that makes them feel the same way. Hopefully, and the people that support their company.
How does technology aid or impact your creative process?
Well, take a look around.
Well, I know that it does.
You mean like computers specifically?
Well, any kind of tech. I do want to get into the computer thing with you. But let's say, for instance, a new synthesizer comes out, or some piece of gear comes out, and I know that even accomplished musicians sometimes have this push-pull relationship with technology, where it's very inspiring, it opens up doors, but it can also create learning curves and
Yeah. Well, I
get
mean,
in the way.
that's just part of the gig. That's the way I look at it. I'm one of those that is willing to, as I say often, go to bed later and get up earlier and just do your work. Put in the bench time, learn it, learn the language, learn the products, or learn the instrument, or learn the code of things, and now, that also includes a unlimited variety of things when you are working with the computer. I still primarily work in analog on my own records, but I am not always just doing analog work. I mean, that would be great, but I have to rely on the computer a lot in a lot of the things that are incorporated in that. And with instruments themselves and their language and dialect and sort of range of limitations, this is part of what I do every day. It's not really, I don't have any resistance with it. It doesn't get in the way of my art. It just becomes another, another vine in the myriad of what it is I have to do to see into the future of what I want to do with my career, or, my art, whatever, it's all connected. It's kind of, to kind of go what you were saying earlier about, does the technology get in the way? Well, I think it comes down to knowing your limitations with something to the point where it's not productive. And to sit there and just like edit something to death and to fix everything is just, I said, man, that's boring. That's a day job I don't want to have. I would rather be able to go in and nail it and just, and if it's not perfect, but if the feeling is there, that's more important to me than having something that is just spotless. But I try to do as good of a job as I can with analog, and then I'll take it into the computer and I do all the finishing touches in terms of, utilizing good high quality plugins and effects and things. And it's a beautiful marriage. It's a really great time to be this kind of composer.
However you're doing it, Lisa, it's translating wonderfully into your work. And let's get into that a little bit. You have so many albums, so many music projects, but I wanted to touch upon this album that you made with your daughter. Tell me about that and what that process was.
Well, it was one of those just natural occurrences. She has been here with me full time since lockdown, since the pandemic has been thrust upon us. And it's been the most time that I've got to spend with my daughter since she was little, when she was a baby. And it's awesome. I love it. I love being a parent. It is my greatest love. And it just kind of happened. It wasn't really anything planned. I had completed a series of albums I felt really good about this year. My daughter and I had been spending a lot of time in nature, in our surroundings, and reading, doing a lot of reading, and of course watching movies and films and things. And at her age, she's going to be 9 next weekend. This weekend, she is very interested in things of that nature, and it was such a blast to do it. She's very creative visually and loves to write stories and draw pictures and do these storyboards. And she really got into this storyboard writing and drawing to the point where I was very interested in it myself. I was like, how would you feel if I made some music based off of these storyboards? And she's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So that's what started it. And we just came up with these concepts, and I began to sketch out musical ideas to go with them. Once I would get a sort of bed laid down for these pieces, I would bring her into the studio, and we would sit together and think about what kind of events or what was going on in her mind's eye with the storyboard as the music would roll through. And then I would dial something up and, play a horn or a flute or have some sort of flourish, whatever came to her mind. I tried to immediately react to that. And she did some playing on it as well, a little bit, and some little string parts and things. And we made a lot of bird sounds together. We'd go listen to the birds in the morning and then record them on my phone. And then we'd come back in and dial them up on the modulars and things like that. And just create these imaginary worlds. It was really a pleasure. It's what we did on our summer vacation.
So what's next for Lisa Bella Donna? Where are you going project-wise? What do you got on the burners right now?
Well, I have a lot of albums that I want to put out over the course of the next year that I'm working on slowly but surely. And I've been building my system, my synthesizer system, and it's soon to expand. I've been working on that expansion a great deal. And I'm excited to eventually, reveal what that is and all that. I mean, this is part of the process to expand. And just to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of consulting work, and I'm excited to continue to do that and more teaching. It was really a privilege and pleasure to do the summer Berklee College of Music electronic music class. That was really an honor to be invited to conduct that. And I'm going to do some more stuff with Berklee this year, as well as hopefully next year. So, more teaching and clinics. I really do love getting that opportunity to connect with students and help faculty sort of hydrate what their curriculum is, and just to try to bring another perspective and hopefully some sort of positive reinforcement to the arts. So that's a huge, there's a lot of things that's going on right now that I hope to see the light of day in 2021. Of course, pandemic pending, we'll see what happens. Other than that, just trying to.
Other than all of those things.
Other than all of those things, try to, be healthier, be a healthier person, continue to work on my health and try to just try to get better as a player and as an artist and try to improve, as always.
I need Moog to come out with a piece of equipment that prevents me from opening the refrigerator. We're going to have to put that on the request list.
They figure that one out. Living out
Lisa,
here in the country, we like to eat out here.
I don't see the Mellotron, Lisa. Where's the Mellotron?
Oh, there's a whole other room. Hammond's and Rhodes and Mellotrons and more tape machines. You know, there's stuff everywhere around here, you know, so, but they're here, and I'm getting ready to redo this part of my studio. I'm very excited about. I'm installing 64 channels of mixing desk.
Well,
And over the summer, I have been purchasing these 1/4-inch machines that I want to use in a specific way. So having the large desk will allow me a better workflow. That's kind of one of the things that have been a little bit of a hindrance this summer. It's just like the amount of work I'm trying to do versus, you know, all of the different setups and the sessions, and, you know, I'm trying to make it so I can do multiple things each day and try to achieve these goals. It's a lot. There's a lot that I'm trying to take on, and it's not always happening because I have to set, you know, I have to change settings and do things differently. So I'm excited to expand the workflow, you know, as well as I am excited to expand, you know, the system as always. You know, just continue to compose and just hopefully continue to inspire and be inspired. You know, I have a lot of beautiful people that come my way and are a huge part of this whole thing for me. And that's the whole joy of it, more than just getting to make this music and do this sort of thing every day. It really has as much to do with the people I get to work with and to get to know.
it's very evident to me that, that what you're doing is reaching people, and I'm a fan, and I continue to look forward to future projects and more music coming out. Um, and tell viewers where they can go to purchase and listen to your music.
Well, an easy answer is to go to Lisa Bella Donna at Bandcamp. That's where my discography is. And I do have a website that's about to get updated, get an overhaul, and that's just lisabelladonna.com. You can also find a lot of things with Moog Music. They have patch books available, and I'm a huge part of their firmware updates. So like I said, you can, if you're a registered user with Moog, you can download patches, and I have done some album projects that I've donated to them for different causes, artist relief, etc. So, you know, you can download albums for free, or you can donate to the charities from the Moog Bandcamp, Moog Music Bandcamp. I'm very proud to announce that I am included in Ken Bjorn's upcoming book. And he is a brilliant, brilliant modern author of electronic music, and just the whole process of the way music is going in electronics and technology. I've contributed to a few of his books, but this particular new book that he's coming up with is Push, Turn, Move with Moog, or Patch and Tweak rather, excuse me, with Moog Music, is going to be a really awesome spread that includes, of course, some history and process about how I do my electronic music, but it also offers some patches and things that people can try at home. And as always, I urge anyone that checks any of that stuff out to feel welcome to reach out to me on social media. You can find me on Instagram, Lisa Bella Donna, and I am on Facebook, but I don't know how much longer. I don't know. It's just not a very, you know, it's just not as easy to communicate with people on as Instagram is. I do a Q&A on Instagram most weekends, not always, but it's a great way to connect with lots of different musicians and artists.
Well, if I could say a quick word about your uh, the stuff that you're doing for Moog Music. I would encourage people to look that up, even if you are not a musician, because these demos and clinics are as much about the gear, as much about performance and music and creativity as they are about the gear. In fact, I think that they do the gear justice. It's not just people talking about the synthesizer and features and just playing the same notes over and over again. You're demonstrating the Moog gear in such a way where you're seeing it really in action. And to me, that's brilliant. I've watched several of them, and my takeaway is, well, of course, these are great instruments, and I love what Moog is doing right now, and kudos to them. But I also walk away from those thinking, my goodness, Lisa Bella Donna. So I would encourage more people to go out there and look at those and not feel like they're just going to get inundated with technical jargon, but that they're actually going to see somebody playing these instruments.
Well, there's more stuff coming. It's gonna be awesome.
Leave us with some wisdom.
Have gratitude about your life. Start there, because it's easier to start from there than it is from fear and, you know, anything like that. So I try to start every day being grateful for my health and my life, and the safety of my kid, and just the promise of life itself. I love being alive now, and it wasn't always that way for me. It took a long time to learn a lot of lessons and have to do a lot of work to get to that point, regardless of all the amazing music and things that have come my way in life. It took me a long time to learn how to get out of my own way, and learning how to do that in whatever way best suits you will only help you with anything else that you achieve or want to achieve. I guess the other thing would be just enjoy the process. Trust it. Trust that, you know, when there's things that definitely seem like, boy, this is a lot of work, or I'm really afraid that this won't work out, or, you know, don't put fear first. Just get in there and get dirty with it and get your hands in it, and trust that the process will reveal and bear good fruit for you if your intentions are clear. I think that's really it. When I made my intentions about my own life clear to myself, it really helped everything else that I do, you know, and it helps me to be a better parent, helps me to have better business ethic, and to do things as timely of a manner as I can. You know, that's what's working for my life, you know. So so get in there and do it, and do what you want to do with as much of your heart as you can, and your health. You know? If you got your health, man, you got it. You got a key. You got a key to whatever it is that your heart's after.
Well, those are wise words indeed. And Lisa, thank you so much for being a part of this series. I very much appreciate what you've brought to it, and I wish you the best of luck on these projects, and I look forward to seeing them as they come out. And maybe there's another project with your daughter out there that we'll see. But I want to encourage everybody to please go and seek out, if you haven't already, seek out the music of Lisa Bella Donna. And I promise you, it's going to be a rewarding experience.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of your program and including me.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike.